Hey, how are you doing? I can't hear you, so I'm just, nope. Were you on mute?
Hey Tab,
Hey, how are you doing?
doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
It's good to see you. I
How's
think we're
the,
the only ones
what's that?
now. I'm the only one still here on this call.
You, Catherine, and myself were it. We're a little early. We're the early ones, which is all right. I'm always interested in how many people show up. So I figured that the ones that show up are the important ones. So how's life treating you? How's tennis?
It's good. We're on a quarantine, but the courts are opening up next week because it's the situation's getting better here. So next week we have the ability to train again at our clubs. And so far, the past weeks I've been training on the public courts in my neighborhood. So
Ah,
and doing a lot outside. All training facilities are closed, but they're probably opening up the next couple of weeks. So that's really good news.
that's fantastic. Yeah, this quarantine is throwing a wrench in the works for a lot of people.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
think a lot of industries here in the Netherlands, they're really taking a hit because all the places where you can eat or drink, they're closed. So yeah, all the restaurants, cafes, everything is closed. So they're really taking a hit because it's going to be closed until probably end of May.
Wow.
Or
Yeah.
maybe
Are they? Can they do takeouts, or are they just closed altogether?
they can do takeouts. So yeah, all the places where you can take out, that's still possible, but all the other places, restaurants and stuff, that's closed. They're not allowed to open.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. Well, that is how it is here. We have delivery, we have takeout, and that's about it.
Oh
It's
wow.
yeah, that's it. So
Remind me where you're at, Gigi.
I'm in the Netherlands, Amsterdam.
Okay.
Where do you live? In which city?
Mukilteo, near Seattle.
yes, near Seattle. Hey, Sebastian. Oh, I bet he's muted. No, he's not muted. Maybe he's muted himself. Sebastian's quiet. Oh, there he is. How you doing, Sebastian?
Share video.
Don't worry.
Hey,
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We're here.
how you both doing?
We're doing great.
Very good. Very
How
good.
are you and Catherine?
Doing well, thank
We're
you.
doing fantastic.
Great.
We're separated right now. Not our marriage, but different rooms, you know. So
Okay.
That's better. That's better for sure.
Yes.
it's cool, man. I didn't know. Oh, is up the thing? Okay, there we go. Cool.
I'm sorry.
All right, now, man.
I'm pretending it's
I'm
cold.
old, man, so I'm trying to be cool, like all the young people. So I'm like that too.
Trying to hide my quarantine beard. I haven't
Yeah.
I've never had this long beard my whole life. I don't know if I can call it a beard at all, but if it's a beard, it's the longest I ever had.
Yeah, I keep shaving every day. I keep shaving. So's Catherine, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Just joking. Just joking. Come on. So how's you guys now? Are you guys? You're in the UK, is that right?
Oh,
We're in Barcelona right now.
Barcelona.
Yeah, but we are from Sweden, both of us.
What's that?
We are from Sweden, so we're Swedish,
Sweet.
but we lived in Barcelona now. Sebastian been here for over a year, and I moved down like 6 months ago.
Oh,
So
cool.
now I don't know how much you know about what we're doing, but we're having this online business. Sebastian is an online coach, right? Specialized for dancers mostly. But now we're actually starting a new company also. We're gonna have our first sales call on Monday, which is very interesting. So we're doing online training for companies also.
Like what kind of training for companies?
Like the body weight training, you can do it in your home, you can do it in the gym, you can do it wherever you want. And Sebastian have been doing this for years on dancers, and it works for anyone. You know what I mean? It's very functional training. So,
Well,
so what we're trying now is to adapt that to companies instead, because
yeah, I made a comment on one of his Instagram threads, and I was about getting a hold of me, but I got ignored, man.
Really?
He ignored me. I was like, hey, it was somebody that you had. I don't know. You had trained for 30 days. It was a side by side, and I went, huh. That's pretty phenomenal. And I was like, if you could just like get me to do one of these, just a little bit, just a little shrinkage. Not.
I'm the guy. I'm the guy.
it's all
That
Photoshop.
sounds bad. That sounds bad.
It's all.
I got you. I will send you the link. Now you said it out here.
The funny, crazy thing is, now you have problems.
Well, I'm excited because I've I don't know if you know this, Sebastian. Hey Shane, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
Good. So Sebastian, I don't know if you know this, but I'll just say it this way. At one point, I lost 100 pounds, and I need to re-lose some of that now. But it's kind of a constant battle for me, and so I'm all in, man.
If you've done it once, you can do it twice.
Oh heck yeah, man. That's for sure. That's for sure. When you say I can do it twice, you don't mean I can gain the 100 pounds twice.
No.
'Cause I don't want to do that.
It's all ambition. It's all ambition.
Yeah, it's all ambition. I mean,
Yeah. Hey, so I'm gonna give it just a couple of more minutes and then jump in. Hey Shane, where are you at?
I'm in just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh, cool. Like what part?
We live in Victoria.
Okay. So I'll tell you something real quick. Years ago, I was my background is security, like cyber security, and I was in St. Paul, sitting in the office of I was working with Madam Kiffmeyer, who is the Secretary of State at the time, and I was sitting in Jesse the Body Ventura's office as he was digitally signing documents, and it was great because he had these sausage fingers, and he was like, okay, where's the J? There. Okay, it was horrible. It was the funniest thing. I was like, I can't believe. It was just surreal to be sitting there with him. So anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump in. So hey Rocky, it's good to have you here.
Hey buddy.
Gene, I'm going to say it's good to have you here too. How about that? I don't know what to say that about Gene, but I'm going to say it this time. But I will say to everybody, thanks for jumping in. Thanks for doing this. And I'm gonna make Catherine a host real quickly because I'm gonna keep the host. I'll just manage it. The new way that that Zoom does everything, because of the security risks that they've had, you just can't like allow everybody. Somebody's got to constantly be letting new people in. So that'll be me. Actually, Catherine, I think I am going to make you the host unless it becomes an issue. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And then you can be the one letting people in.
All right.
Awesome. So so I'm going to jump in. When I put this thing up on the D&D group and on my web or on my Facebook page, I had titled it "Focus and Doubling Down," and then as I started to like look at what I wanted to talk about, I kind of did a shift, and I was like, I want to talk about doubling down first and then focusing. So one of the things is most of you know my history, but we're in this really strange economy, this strange time, this all of this situation, and the truth is that we're just doing this collectively, but everybody goes through something like this at some point in time, often individually, and that's kind of what happened to me in my experience. So for me, I had like three years of training leading up to this. So I'm like, this is easier for me than it would have been had I not done that. So thinking about doubling down, I guess the first question I have, and I think anybody can unmute themselves if they want. But how many of you have something you really want to accomplish?
Yeah, me.
Everybody?
Yeah.
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 Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So, and I assume when you want to accomplish something, you want to build something great.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Great. So you want to accomplish something, you want to build something great. Anybody kind of feeling polarized right now because of all this stuff that's going on?
What do you mean by that? Can you clarify?
Polarized meaning unsure, uncertain. I don't know where to go. How do we do this? What do we do? That's kind of what I mean by polarized. Thanks for asking. And I probably like everybody, I keep hearing things from people or seeing things from people. And I've got a sheet of paper stuff. I keep looking down. You guys don't wonder what's down there. It's just this paper. Just to kind of keep me on track. But I keep hearing things from people like, oh, this is the new normal. This is the way things are going to be. And I hear people, looking for validation from other people that that things, are things bad for you, or how are things for you? And really people looking for validation, like that what they're experiencing is okay. And I think about years ago, back in I think it was 2007, 2008. I was sitting around with a bunch of salespeople, and they were all asking each other, "Hey, how's your business? How's your territory? How are you meeting quota? Are you doing this?" And all of them were like, no, it's not happening. And they basically collectively, talked themselves into it being okay that they weren't meeting their objectives. And so people tend to look for people that have similarities to what they're doing. They're looking for almost like a collective misery. They want that, how can I find people that validate, my level of what I'm feeling? And there's people out there. There's people that and I want to say people we all know, not, and I'll do the asterisk, not Tim Grover, but there's people out there that say everybody is scared. Everybody is scared, and the truth is that's not the truth. Not everybody's scared. I'm not scared, and I'm not saying that I don't have moments of like, am I going in the right direction, or is this happening, or should that be happening, or whatever. But it's, it's this everybody is scared, and that's just not true. And it's almost like everybody's stirring this pot of despair, this pit of despair. It's just, and we just have to be careful of that. And you know, as Catherine and I were on our way back from the office, this is like right at the forefront of the pandemic, and she was listening to, I don't even remember who it was, and if I did remember, I wouldn't say it because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But he had said, you know, right now people should look at pausing their business and pivoting and focusing on other things that they can do inside their business, and not going out and looking for new business. And I just remember hearing that, and you know, for the next 15-minute ride home, I'm seething, I'm irritated, I'm mad. I'm like, man, you know, I'm not going to buy into that, but however many people that are listening to him are buying into his pause, and, you know, don't go out and find new business, you know, just, you know, nobody's buying, which is what he was saying. And I just remember going, holy crap, people are going to buy into this. People are going to believe that. And what happens is when we start to do this, we really become our own arch nemesis. And, you know, it's like, who needs, you know, Batman doesn't need the Joker, you know, doesn't need Penguin, man. You got yourself. And we can do that. We can really become our own arch nemesis. And so, you know, the truth is that while all of this is going on, a lot of people are flourishing during this crisis. And I don't want to say it because I want to be like, oh, look, you know, look at what I'm doing. You know, I will say that our company has a goal, like most companies. We have a revenue goal, and we're 4 months into it, and we're 98% of our annual goal, and much of that is, you know, business that we got during this economic downturn. And you know, we're not going to finish up 300% of our goal, but I bet you we finished 200%, and a lot of this is going to be during the pandemic. You know, there's all these people that are pushing and doing this, and you know, part of this is, and kind of what I want to get across to people is that during this upheaval, I'm not even sure whatever you call it, a lot of people are spinning each other up, and you know, I remember somebody had sent me a slide deck of a very popular individual that was like, hey, this is how you handle this. And I read like the first 2 slides, and I was like, man, this guy is stirring the pot, because if he stirs the pot enough, he's going to sell more product. And so there's this constant like churning that everybody wants to do. And while they're doing that, there's a bunch of people out there that are really highly focused and highly energized in the direction that they're going, and they're not being moved by the masses. They're being driven by their own internal focus and belief. It's a belief that they have in themselves, and it's not that they don't, you know, they know that they're going to have problems, that mistakes are going to happen, that things are going to occur, but you have this belief, and I think that's really what I wanted to get across on that. And the other thing is, and this is really part of the doubling down. They have a plan, and they work the plan, and they live by the plan. And you know, anybody who really knows me knows that, man, I love a good plan. I don't over plan, but I love a good plan, and I want to talk about focusing and about why you need to do that here in a bit. But they have plans, they work a plan, they manage a plan, they focus on that plan, and they don't get caught up in what other people are saying. And man, if you're not aware that people are saying all kinds of crazy crap out there right now, you're living under a rock. because there's a lot of people saying all kinds of things. And they're looking for, most of them are looking for company. They're looking for somebody to go, hey, yeah, man, that does suck. And you're right, it does suck. Hey, let's get a bunch of people together and we can all suck together. and man, you know, honestly, that sucks. You know? And you know, I have to tell you, most of you know that I'm going to be publishing my book, self-publishing. People are like, wow, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm self-publishing. It's only so cool. But I originally was going to call the book Unsuckable. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But really, that's what we want to do is we don't want to suck. We don't want to get into what everybody else is doing. So does anybody in here play blackjack? Oh,
I played it before, yes, sir.
okay. Can somebody explain to me, anybody who wants to do it, explain to me what does it mean to double down in blackjack?
Well, I'm more familiar. I've played blackjack sporadically, but Tab, I'm more familiar with the term all in.
Okay. What does that mean? What does that mean?
What that means, Tab, is when I'm going all in, let's say I love Texas Hold'em. So when I'm going all in, I have such confidence that I am leaving no resource behind. It's going into that pot and I'm going for it.
Okay. And you're feeling pretty confident, right? You're feeling pretty good that you're double down. There's a good probability you're going to be successful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, in blackjack, if you've got a king and a 7, you know, you're probably an idiot for doubling down. Unless, of course, you win, but honestly, the likelihood isn't very good that you're going to draw a 4 or less. So this idea of doubling down is, how do you take what you have, your energy, your resources, maybe your money, all of that, and put it in and double down? And the reason why that is, you know, really key right now is because anything that anybody has to do, you know, if you have a business and you want to grow that business, you know, you probably at a minimum need to double up. You need to double up on your efforts. You need to double up on your energy. You need to double up on everything, because if you're doing what you've done in the past, maybe you're going to be half successful. You know, so if you've got $1 million you're trying to drive into your company in a year, if you keep it up, you might make 500,000, right? Which is going to cause you problems, but you might have to double down. You might have to add a lot more to that. And you really have to be willing to go all in, as Rocky says. And so what does that mean? That means not only your level of effort, but what are you willing to give up? And that's a hard one for people, because, you know, maybe it's not as hard right now because, you know, giving up stuff like hanging out with your friends, you know, isn't too hard, because most of us have been forced to do that. We're forced to quarantine and we're forced to do that. But maybe now you have to give up TV, you know. Somebody I'm close to, I'll just say it was my oldest sister. You know, we were talking about it, and she's like, why don't you watch the news? And I'm like, because I don't need anything that the news has to tell me. And I'm like, well, how much do you watch? And she goes, well, I cut way down. So she only watches about 5 hours of news a day. That to me is just freaking mind-boggling, right? So what is it that you are willing to give up in order to double down? Now, one of the things that you know, that people do is they have an idea. They'll think, you know, I'm gonna I want to do this particular thing. You know, as an example, you know, when I decided to write the book, I decided to write that book, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years ago. And it was an idea. You know, I started writing it more of to almost like medicate myself. You know, I'd write to like just get things out, just because I was going through all this crap. And pretty soon I started writing. I was like, oh wow, man, I think I have enough that I got to start to a book, which is a really bad thing if you don't know how to write. And I learned a lot over time. But what happened is there reached a point where I had to say, am I really going to take this serious? Is this an idea or is this a real thing? And if you have an idea and you're talking about it and you're not doing it, you're just blowing hot air. And so you need to have a plan. You absolutely have to have a plan. And I don't mean so for me, somebody might say, like, how do I go about doing that? I'm not necessarily even talking about a real deep formalized business plan. I want to be able to look and say, I'm going to accomplish, and Sebastian knows this because he uses it, but I created this thing called the opportunity pipeline. And it really is, how do I go about looking at what I want to accomplish in a given year, and even beyond that. But really I'm looking at, what do I want to accomplish in a year? And then I break it down to, what do I want to accomplish in a month? And then I break it down to, what do I want to accomplish in a week? And then I break it down to, what do I want to accomplish in the day? And then I break it down to, what am I going to accomplish this hour? And the reason why I do that is because if I don't break my plan down to something that I can digest, I need to be able to see where I'm going, the really big picture of where I'm going. And I was just today talking to Catherine about it, and I was like, man, 6 weeks ago, it's like my plan is going to get jacked up this year because of this stupid pandemic. And then I was looking at it today and I was like, wow, I think I'm going to hit most of the things on my plan, which is really cool. But it is like the daily doubling down on that plan. And so you have to have something where it's like, this is what I'm going to accomplish. And then you have to break it down into something you can measure. And you have to hold your feet to it, right? And so one of the things that I do is I, in the process of doubling down, is I'll create a decision tree. And what I want to do is I want to say, like Sebastian was just talking about this new, and I'm sorry, man, is it David is it David? Oh, look, man, I got it right. Woo! I actually got somebody's name right. I'm so bad at names. So David and Sebastian were just talking about how they're starting another business, or a division of their business or whatever. And, if they don't have a plan, and if they don't have a decision tree that says, we're going to do this, and if this happens, then the next step is this. If the negative happens, then how do we address it? And, everything that I do has a decision tree. So I want to be able to look and say, basically like a what if scenario. What happens if this occurs? And I want to be able to do that, because if I start, if I get too carried away with doubling down, that's the problem with doubling down. I'm not a gambler, but that's the problem with doubling down or going all in. You can only go all in so many times. Because if you go all in every single time, pretty soon you're all out, and you're all out of money. And we see that, we see that right now in the economy with decisions that people have made where they're like, they just keep pumping stuff in, and, using other people's money, and building debt and doing all of this stuff. And man, when the times are good, they're just rolling. And then all of a sudden, when the debt chip gets pulled in, they're reeling. And you just can't. And I know this personally, because that's how I even got started on the book. Is we doubled down one too many times, and my company ended up $750,000 in debt, which is a freaking crap load of money for a small business. And we had to bail ourselves out. And really, so what got us into it was doubling down. What got us out of it was doubling down smart, if that makes sense. So what we started to do is we started to look, and we had these decision trees, and we had this what if, and these fail out things where you know, like, you know, our whole thing was we're driving, you know, we have to drive all this revenue in order to get money to pay the debt and to pay our people's salary. And you know, sometimes that got really skinny and it got really hairy and scary and all of that. And we had to, you know, I had to sit down and with my leadership team and say, hey, it appears like we have the revenue coming in. These things are closing. This looks like it's going to happen, and we're going to get beyond this. This problem that we have is like a 2-week problem. And then I would come back and I would say, is that correct? Do you guys see that? What happens if that doesn't happen? Do you think there's a likelihood that that's going to happen? And the reason why you do that, and if you don't have people that you can, like, if you're like a sole proprietor, you got to find people that can do that for you. You got to, you know, and you know, one of the things that another thing that I do is I have peer groups, and basically it's business peer groups. And if anybody's interested, let me know. Right now I'm putting together a couple. I have one of them, and I'm putting another one together, and it's basically it's free right now until I figure out how to monetize it. But whoever joins that right now, it'll always be free. But anyway, the great thing about the peer group is that it constantly gives you somebody to bounce ideas off of, and it gives you somebody that you can come back and say, am I freaking out of my damn skull? Am I out of my head? And people are going to say, yeah, you're out of your head, or no, you're not, or here's some ideas. So you want to be able to have that. You want to be able to have a what if scenario. And when you're doubling down, that means that you know, you're taking chances. And that, you know, even though you're taking these chances, that you know, there's always a risk versus reward. And you want to make sure that what you're risking, you can handle the risk. And, you know, I reached a point, you know, here's something that's interesting is when you go through something that's really traumatic, and, you know, when you're like me and you owed 18 different people $750,000, and you feel like, man, I suck, I'm weak, I'm a failure. You get all these things, and, you know, and you're like, I don't have any power, and this guy wants his money, and I kind of have to, like, you know, grovel, and I kind of have to do that because if I don't, you know, he might get mad. Well, the truth is that's when you have all this power. And I didn't realize that beforehand, because I'm like, oh, wait, it dawned on me later on that as I started to pay this off, I started to realize that, you know, I was the guy that had the money that they needed, that they wanted. So I had all this extra power. I mean, I didn't want to abuse that power, but it was important for me to realize that I had that power. And so for me to double down the second time around, that sounds cool. Double down the second time around. Anybody, feel free to take that if you write music. But anyway, if you're doubling down and you're taking this risk, for me, the risk was already there. It's like, if this doesn't work, I have to file personal bankruptcy, and a lot of people are going to get hosed. So for me, the double down was kind of forced upon me, and that was, well, if this doesn't work, I have to go back and do that thing. Thankfully, that never happened, and we paid it off. And so the double down paid off. And so you have to be able to look and say, what are you willing to risk? Now, I'm going to say one more thing about this before I jump into kind of talking about focus. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, ask them. It's like, feel free, just I got this whole chat box thing going off over here. You know, people saying different stuff, and Gene saying, haha, birds of a feather, stuff like that. So feel free to ask, questions in there, or just ask them. All right. Yep.
Got a question, sir. How do you double down smart? Do you have a feedback loop on your decision tree, or how do you do that?
That's a great question. Smart is a relative term, isn't it? And how you go about doing it. You know, the truth is with a decision tree, I'm always looking at it and saying, you know, if this happens, what do I do? You know, if I go, you know, for you know, using my real world experience as an example, you know, if we were to say we needed to have $100,000 by the end of the month, the decision might be, you know, that if we don't have that, what do we do? And that did happen, right? And the decision was, you know, if we still have revenue coming in, then we're going to have to shortfall certain people, right? People are just going to have to wait longer in that case, right? I mean, so we need $100,000, we get $80,000. You know, somebody's not going to get their money, and usually one of those people that didn't get their money was me. I was the easy one, right? Is just not paying me. But then somebody else wasn't, right? And then sometimes the decision is so catastrophic where you have to look back and say, and hope. This is why having a peer group, if you don't have a leadership team or whatever, even if you have a leadership team, a peer group is really good. But the reason why this is really important is because there's something called the escalation of commitment. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that, but it's basically when you are basically you're doubling down, right? And you're like, hey, you know, I owe $750,000. I've been able to pay down, you know, 150,000 of it. I've got $600,000 of it left, and the floor falls out, right? And you don't have revenue coming in. You don't have you know, you don't have revenue coming in. You don't have anything in the pipeline. Nothing's happening, and it's like you're like doubling down on air, right? You're like, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep pushing, and so there's this. It's this acting irrational and justifying what you're trying to do. And so you got to be careful. That's why, to me, a decision tree is important. And that's why having a peer group is important, is to keep that irrational justification out of there. Did that answer it, Rocky?
Yes.
Okay. And then Sebastian said, do you have a framework for a decision tree? Example, what was that? Example 3 questions you always ask yourself before each decision. One of the questions I always ask myself is, what happens if I do this? What happens if I don't do this? What's the worst that can happen? I also ask myself, you know, what do I gain? What do I really gain by this? You know, the idea is to ask yourself really good logical questions ahead of time. So you want to be able to say, I'm asking these questions now when I'm not, you know, an emotional basket case where I'm going to start, you know, I'm going to start making poor decisions based upon, you know, feelings, right? So to me, it's always about coming up with really good questions and then trying to drive down on those questions. And they don't have to be super deep questions, but I find that if I can start off there, I can dive deeper into the questions, right? It's like anything in life. It could, it could be, I mean, if you're an athlete, it could be like, well, what happens if I continue to push my body? What happens if I push my body too hard? What happens if I exhaust myself, right? Do I risk injury? Is the injury worth the gain, right? Just as an example, right? Those are kind of the questions that I might ask, of myself. But what I really want to do is right now, and this is true anytime. I'm not a fan of always doubling down, but I am a fan of doubling down smart with a reduced risk. The reason why it's so important right now is because no matter how positive we are, how confident we are, how unafraid we are, valiant, whatever term you want to use, there's still all these external forces that are gonna like weigh down on us, and so we have to work a lot harder to push those, all of those things out of the way. And it's like, I could look and say, why is our company doing well still? It's because, man, everything I look at now, and this started because we had problems. My background is sales, and but what really started was, my decision that aside from everything else, I'm driving revenue. I drive revenue. I drive revenue. That's what I do. And so I'm in the process of leaving I'm not fully leaving the leadership of my company, but I'm pushing that over so I can constantly focus on that. And the more I can do that, and we have to hire 7 people right now. And it's really easy for me to go, there's nobody inside the company that's better at finding people than me. I've been doing this for 20 some odd years. I know tons of people. The problem is that I'm not, even though I'm the best person to do it, I'm also not the best person to do it. So you have to look at what decisions do you make that are going to be able to help you reach that ultimate goal of reaching that plan. Does that make sense? I'm nodding like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Yeah, makes sense to me. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit. Does anybody ever have any problem with staying focused?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, it drives me, nobody's going to stay focused 100% of the time, right? I could probably ask, is anybody else thinking about anything, besides this call right now? And if you're a football fan and you're in the US, you might be going like, yeah, man, I wonder who my team is drafting right now, because today's the 3rd day of the draft, right? And so you lose your focus, you get distracted. One of the best ways to keep your focus is you have to have a reason. And I wrote this down. I said, you have to have a reason to focus, right? You can't, focusing without a reason doesn't matter. And the reason has to be clear, right? You have to have a clear idea of what you're focusing on. And that goes back to the plan. And to have visibility into why you're focusing. And it's got to be clear. And you have to be able to measure your reason, right? This goes back to the plan. If you want to focus and you want to accomplish anything, you got to have a plan. Otherwise, what are you focusing on, right? And that's why, it's kind of like if you have no reason, then really you have no focus. So you have to have that reason. You have to have that thing that really drives down. And as strange as it sounds, I plan to focus. Okay. I spent a lot of time over my life you know, like everybody, and some of the people that are a little bit older like me, right, might remember day timers. You know, where you carried around, a book and a pen. You guys know what a pen is? I'm just joking.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be funny. Just trying to be funny. Okay, we used to carry around a book and a pen, and you'd write everything down, and you'd plan stuff out. And you had this day timer, and you know, I've always looked for how can I make something that's a little bit better. How can I get the most out of what it is I'm doing? And I hated the idea of having a to-do list or critical tasks or anything like that, because I always felt like I was more interested in checking off the box and getting something done than I was really looking at doing it well. And that's why, I created that opportunity pipeline, because I was driving on the road. Catherine and I were driving down the road on our way to the office one day, and I went, man, I got all these, and I used it. I was like, I got all these critical tasks I have to do. And I just went, I hate that word. I hate the word critical. I hate the words critical task, because it just makes me feel like I'm just a hamster on a wheel. And so I jokingly said, you know what I need? I need opportunities, because, I said, I need opportunities. And I kind of stopped and I went, wow, as strange as that sounds, calling them opportunities just made me feel really good. I manage opportunities. I don't manage tasks. And so I created this whole thing, but there's one part that I just couldn't do a better job. And I don't know if anybody, I know pretty much probably everybody's familiar with Ed Milet. But Ed had this one podcast or YouTube or probably both, that he talked about he talked about breaking his days into like 6-hour chunks, and then doing the sprint on those 6-hour chunks. So the idea was that that if he broke his days down into 6 hours, he basically got 3 days for the price of one. was his thought. And I just kind of went, that actually sounds really good. Like, and he talks about how he does it. But the reason why I couldn't, man, it just resonated with me, and I didn't want to make a change into something else. But the reason why that resonated with me so much is because he breaks it down into hours and says, this is what I'm going to accomplish this hour. And then every hour he stops and he says, did I accomplish that? And he does a reevaluation of that hour. And the reason why I really like that so much is because I'm a planning junkie. I love to plan and I love to act on the plan. But the reason why that meant so much to me is because every hour I'm forced to evaluate what I did. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, man, I just blew through an entire hour and I didn't do anything I wanted to do, because somebody came in and like freaking snatched my time because they wanted me to do something that wasn't planned. But the difference is, instead of going a full day or longer, I'm only losing an hour because I'm checking myself at an hour. And I say that because focus is so critical. There's one of the calls, anybody, I don't know if everybody was on one of those calls, but Tim Grover was talking about how people complete 40% of the things that are on their on their to-do list. And I just went, I remember saying it to Catherine. I was like, are you kidding me? God, like I hit like at a minimum 90% of what I have on my opportunity pipeline. And it's like the reason why this is so critical is because what you focus on is what you're going to accomplish. And if you have something you really want to accomplish, and that first question I asked was, how many of you want to accomplish something great? Talking about accomplishing something great isn't very great. It's just, as Mr. T would say, I ain't got no time for the jibber jabber, right? And that's all it is, man. It's just jibber jabber. It's just words. It's just talking. It's until you until you create a plan and then you focus on that plan. And I say that because, you know, I'll tell you something. For me, I set a plan, and if I over plan, you know, like I overcommit to myself, which I do a lot, because I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and maybe I underestimate how long it's going to take. I punish myself. I'm just like, well, dumbass, you shouldn't have done that, man. You should have planned better. And so sometimes I'm up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, working and finishing up my plan because, you know, or, you know, what I had on my opportunity pipeline, because I committed to that to myself. And that is what you need to do. So you need to be able to make a plan, live with a plan, and stick with it. And that means that maybe you're cutting out something, right? You in order to meet that plan, to focus and commit to it. And that, you know, that's what's going to make a difference in anything that you're going to do. And that's why I wanted to put focus after doubling down, because if you're going to double down and you're going to put forth all this effort and you're going to, you know, and you're going to go and do everything, you freaking better make sure that you're willing to back it up and to focus and to take action on those things. And, you know, like I said, you know, I'm measuring everything. You know, that's a big deal for me. And I want to be able to look, and I want to be able to plan something out. I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to, you know, review it, to check it, to start again, to do more. But I want to constantly be able to monitor myself. And you know, we all are used to failing, and you know, it's great. You know, now we talk about like, oh man, failing is so great. You know, we've like turned the page of saying, you know, it's okay to fail, to, yeah, man, we're failing. Well, I hate failing. I want to, you know, I don't want to fail. And you know, when you really fail, and when you suck it, when you suck extraordinarily, when you're like, man, you know, like when I went through my trouble, all of this issues with my business, I mean, if somebody would have said, hey, here's a magic wand, go screw up your business, I would have gone like, I don't need your damn magic wand, man. I got this thing. I can do better on my own without your magic wand. I can screw this up way better than what you can do. The thing is, what I've learned is that by asking better questions, by preparing ahead of time, by having a good decision tree, by having a good peer group that you really listen to, and leadership, and by doing that, and by checking what you're doing hour by hour at a minimum, right? I mean, hopefully during that hour because I've learned to catch myself and say, I'm gonna come back and report back to myself at the end of this hour, and I now know that I have to go and tell myself that I suck and that I didn't do what I said I was gonna do. And so you start to learn to catch yourself during that hour, not at the end of that hour. I say that because I would much rather fail 50 times a day and catch myself than just have one big, massive awareness of my failures at the end of the day, if that makes sense. I want to be able to correct as I go along and focus and live a plan and do that. So I got about 10 minutes.
Hey, Tab.
My throat hurts. Yeah, Tara, how you doing?
Good, good. I got a question for you.
Sure.
I have something I need to get done every day. For like, I give myself an hour to do it. There's documentation I'm working on. I don't want to do it. It is laborious. It is complicated. And some days I get it, and some days I don't, and I get distracted, and I have a million excuses. Got any tips? It needs to get done. I'm the only one who can do it. So
Is it emotional?
Yes, and it is. I mean, we're going back 9 years of what I see to be my failings, just laid out in paper, and I have to read them, summarize them, document them, cross-reference them, build a narrative. So it's kind of like getting kicked in the head every single time I do it. And I probably got about 2 weeks worth of work left if I'm working like an hour a day. And, you know, I find myself putting it off and doing other stuff that still needs to be done. But it's just any excuse I can get out of it. And I realize like it's weak. I realize I need to do it. But it's crushing me a little bit.
So,
you know, nobody else, I got to get it done.
So if you put it off for another week, if you procrastinate it for another week, you still have 2 weeks worth of work left, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you put it off another 3 weeks, you're going to have 2 weeks worth of work left to do, right?
Yeah, and then the clock I have to get it done will have expired. I got a deadline. Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, whether you have a deadline or you don't have a deadline, you're gonna reach a point where it's critical mass, and you're either going to reach a point where your deadline, you know, I assume if you've got an hour a day, let's say you have 14 hours of work you have to do left to do.
Give or take, yeah.
Take, right? So what's going to happen is you get a deadline, and whatever, it doesn't really matter. You're going to reach about 3 days before that deadline, and you're going to be like, everything's done, everything's off, I got to focus and do this 5 hours a day.
I can't.
I know,
Sure.
but
that's
your option, right? If you keep procrastinating, after a while, that's what happens. So what's that?
That's a good point.
So when I have something, and there have been things that I've worked on that are highly emotional, and I don't want to do them, and it's really easy to want to put it off. And I used to do this thing where I would trick my brain, and I would call it planned procrastination. And then I was like, after a while, I was like, man, that is a load of crap. All I've done is just made myself feel really good about my procrastination, but isn't the case. So what I find that I have to do is I have to break it down, and I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to accomplish today. So if you take what you're going to do, you're going to say, I'm going to do this today. You know, this is, you know, a tenth of what I need to accomplish. I've got 10 days to do it. I'm going to do this much today. And then if that takes me 2 hours because I don't have the emotional wherewithal to do it, it's going to take me 2 hours or 3 hours. Where's the chinchilla? Anyway.
Jackson wants to know where the chinchillas are.
Anyway,
sorry.
I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to say, I'm going to have to take as long as it takes to get that part done. I'm going to do that much today. And then I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break that down into digestible chunks, even if it's only an hour, right? Because it's emotional.
Yeah.
So because it's emotional, I have to put it into digestible chunks. So I may look and say, I have an hour I have to do. I don't have the wherewithal to sit down and do it for a full straight hour.
Yeah, I don't.
But I have to do these 5 or 6 things, and I'm gonna have 6 things I have to do, and each one's going to take me 10 minutes. I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to say, I'm going to get this one done in one sitting. I'm going to get this done in one sitting, and it should take me 10 minutes, and that's all I can emotionally handle right now. I would look at it and say, I am going to absolutely positively get this part done today, and then I would chunk it out, and I would do it throughout the day. But you know, you will reach a point where the pain of not doing it will become greater than the pleasure of not doing it, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
right now it's easy to ignore, right? But at some point in time, the pain of ignoring it will become more painful. So,
yeah, I'm getting closer to the tipping point than I should be. It should be done already.
yeah,
You know?
so just do
I
that.
have a tips that I use sometimes, depending on the task, I guess. But I didn't come up with it myself. But it's called forced creativity. So I play guitar, and sometimes you want to create songs, even if you've been super uncreative for some long time, right? And sometimes you know the guitar is sitting there. I pick it up. I don't really feel like doing it. But I know that if I sit with the guitar for a certain amount of time, I will come up with some songs. I will, enjoy the guitar more again. So what it is, forced creativity is, it's one rule, super simple rule. So if you want to get something done, you only put a rule. Okay, I can sit down now and do this that I'm supposed to do, or I can sit here and do nothing. So you have because usually what we do is that we distract our mind with something else. Like if you need to get A done, you just like, no, but I need to do B and C also, and then you distract yourself. But if you sit down and you just like, the only rule is that if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're just allowed to do nothing. You cannot look at your phone. You cannot, you can sit still and do nothing. Just like sit, think, do whatever, or think about whatever, but you're not allowed to do anything else.
Interesting.
Nothing else. And then after a while, it just makes, after just a few minutes, it makes no fucking sense to just sit here. I get so bored. And then you just start doing it because it's better than sitting doing nothing.
Yeah, I've lasted about a minute and a half.
But it takes but you still have to decide to put some time aside for it. So it doesn't take away that problem. But once you decide, okay, at 2 o'clock I'm going to do this, then you don't, if you can avoid to get distracted by other things, just sit down and try that. It could work.
Yeah, I've woken up an hour earlier than everybody, so nobody's around. You see how not distracting they are. So I can't use that as an excuse. It's just like my own mental weakness. I don't want to deal with the topic matter. But what you and Tab are saying makes a lot of sense. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Anybody have any other questions? Comments?
Tab, Rocky here. Hey, I wanted to say, hitting 90% of your daily opportunity pipeline is exceptional. I think you answered my question. You said you check your plan hourly. Is that for real?
Absolutely.
How do you? Okay.
You mean, do I really do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me come a little bit cleaner. Okay. Let me do a reality. Okay. I get busy and things come up, right? So I'm in the middle of something. So I would probably say, I don't know, 90%, 80, 90, I don't know, but I do most, right? I probably only go 2 hours at max, and maybe Catherine can tell you better because she sees me do this all the time. For the most part, I'm always looking at it.
He is,
What's
sadly.
that?
I said, it's a fact. That's what you do.
Yeah, so I do. I mean, I really try to analyze it hard all the time.
He's a major, like he said, he's an over planner in my estimation, but then I'm the exact opposite. And I'm like, let's not plan, let's just do it. So we don't balance each other out. But anyway, he's trying to teach me. But
one of us gets stuff done. One of us doesn't. I'll let you figure out who that is. This is what it is. So did that answer your question, Rocky?
Yeah, because what I found myself doing is I do have somewhat of a day planner. It's a journal, and I'll have these wonderful 3 things to hit. And what I find myself doing is just going to it in the morning at 6 a.m. and then going to it at 11 or midnight, saying, "Well, I'll just have to roll that over to the next day."
Yeah.
So there's that big 12-hour gap.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm learning from you is, hey, I need to be like a pilot and continue to reference my goals down to the hourly level, right?
Yep. So one of the things that I do, and it's just a trick for me, is because all of mine is online. It's not, I don't print it out. So when I accomplish one of my daily tasks, or even the weekly and the monthly, I do it. I highlight the entire field as green. It's complete. It's done. It's like this. It's like really fulfilling. Like, okay, look, I have that green. At the end of the day, and then I save these each month. I save them, or I save them every day. But then at the end of the month, I have like my final. If I don't do something, it's in red. It's a bright red, and I just freaking cannot stand that. I hate that red. I want to be able to see all green. Very rarely do I get to see all green, but I get it. Yeah, exactly, Sebastian. I wish it was all green, but rarely do I get to see all green, and it drives me bananas. So to me, it's what trick can you play on yourself to get you to get things done? And another thing that you can do is and this is something that I tell myself, is that when I'm up working, my competitors are sleeping. So if you're sleeping, just assume your competitors are up working. Just whatever, right? I mean, it's just got to be whatever you can do to get yourself to that 90%. Anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah, it did.
I know I'll stay on till anybody's done with questions. So, but if you got to go, you got to go. But does anybody else have any questions?
Is this going to be in your book tab, what you talked about?
Yeah, it's all pretty much in there.
Good.
Yep. And, Sebastian was one of the only ones to have a pre-edited copy, and the one I have now, Sebastian, doesn't look anything like it. So, the editor got a hold of it, and I was like, man, I wrote perfect. I edited this. It's flawless. It's flawless. And she got a hold of it and like knocked me down a couple pegs. Cut out about 7,000 words. She said I was wordy. I was like, that's crap. Can you imagine me being wordy? Anyway, so yeah, it is. Yeah. Anyway, anything else? Otherwise,
Yeah, no, it's a great call, Tab.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I love doing this. I'm learning. So if people want me to do more, just give me a topic or something. I'm having fun with this. I didn't exactly set out to do this, but it's fun. So just let me know. All right.
Thank you, Tab.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Tab.
All right, well, thank you.
All right. Have a
Bye,
good
guys.
one. Thank you. Have a good one.
See ya. Thank
Have a
you.
good one. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.